Police officers of Reddit, what is your best I think we have the wrong person story? In our family we had a great uncle who tattooed his name and social security number to his shoulder. Apparently he had the same name and birthday as another guy with a prison record and had kept hearing about it. It came in handy at least twice when he was pulled over and the cops started arresting him. Each time he got out because he had his social security as proof that he was innocent. Someone had stolen a car and I went to go check it out. I'm driving behind what I think is the car. It had the same color vehicle and same car, and the mistake I made was not matching the license plates. I pulled them over, got out the car and realized it was my friend with his family. I reread the license plate and I noticed they were the same except for the last letter on the plate. The last letter on the stolen car was J. The last letter on my friend's was I. I laughed it off and apologized and we went out to dinner later that night. I was a curious little kid. My father stopped at the local liquor store to grab a bottle of wine and I was poking around. The door to the office was unlocked and I wandered inside. Sat in the chair and spun around a few times. Got bored. Wandered out. A few days later my father gets a call from the police. And we go in. As the officer is speaking to us I proceed to spun around in the chair and pick up and look at everything on his desk. After about 2 minutes the officer says, "Thank you for coming in. I see what happened. You can go." Turned out the owner's teenage son stole a few grand from the store and tried to blame it on the handsy 5-year-old. I remember when my son was 3 weeks old. It's 3 AM and I'm laying down on the couch. Baby is in his rocker. Suddenly there is loud knocking on my door followed by police. I thought for sure it was my friends coming back from the bar and they needed a place to crash. They have done that police knock to me before. So I'm sitting there mad thinking, don't they know I just had a kid? Needless to say I didn't answer the door. Figured they could find somewhere else to crash. Next thing I know my door is kicked down. I grab baby and run towards the door and 4 or 5 police officers run in. They search my house with flashlights. Scared the crap out of my sleeping husband. My 5-year-old didn't wake up though, lol. Turns out they had the wrong address. They apologized and a week later they installed a new door for me. But holy duck, that was scary. Not a police officer, but one night around 8 PM my fiance received a call. "Officer Derek, we have your health card. Tell us your whereabouts right now." Fiance: "This isn't Derek." "Oh, you sound like Derek. Your buddies ratted you out and gave us your number. Now where are you?" F: "I'm not Derek and I'm not telling you where I am." "Who are you?" "Oh, this is Officer Smith. Stop messing around and tell us your location." Derek. F: "Again. Derek is not my name. How do I know you're a real officer?" "Oh, boy. If you don't tell me where you are, you're going to be in much more trouble. My badge number is blank." F: "Okay, fine. I'm at home at blank. If you don't show up in a police car, I'm not coming out." He hung up the phone. Dialed 911 calls. We live in a bad area and wasn't sure if this was a fake call or not. Operator verifies that it was a correct badge number. The officer called back. He apparently misdialed it by one number. He apologized, but still blamed my fiance because you were being very defensive and sounded guilty. 2 of my colleagues, murder squad detectives, attended custody to meet a defendant answering bail. When they arrived at the custody desk there were a couple of people hanging around, waiting for their solicitors. They told the custody sergeant they were there for insert name, and he pointed one of the guys out. They went up and introduced themselves and said they would be questioning him at another station. So all 3 got in the car and headed off. Whilst driving, they told the defendant what would be happening. On arrival he would be arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, questioned and either bailed or remanded. The guy was like, "You've got to be joking. Attempt murder?" I was shoplifting. He was relatively calm, half laughing and shaking his head. A short time later one of the officers got a call from the custody SGT. Their actual bail appointment had arrived. There were 2 defendants with the same name answering bail that day. They apologized to the non-murderous shoplifter, turned the car around and headed back to bring the right person in for questioning. Keystone cops to the maximum. Since everyone else isn't a cop, I was 16 and worked at a golf course mowing lawns and such. We got a call at home from the cops that said I'm a suspect in a hit and run accident because my plate tests were on the car that drove away without stopping. The cops said the car was maroon colored, my car was grey. We told them and figured that was that. The next day at work there was a minor accident. A dumbass co-worker pulled a metal rake too hard in the rack holding it came down onto my forehead. It wasn't a deep wound, but it bled a lot. My boss took me to the ER to get my head super glued, and to be safe, took me home too. Thus my car stayed at the golf course. That evening a cop comes by and finds me with a head wound and my car is missing. I look quite guilty. By sheer luck, the cop calls someone after talking to my parents and discovers they got the guy and the plate numbers were close. I probably would have been arrested. Not an officer, but I live in a neighborhood in Indy that is going through a major revitalization right now. So it's very much in a transitional phase. We rent a house from a good friend of ours. He bought the house from some garbage people who had lived there for a long time. These people sold, made drugs. There was violence, prostitution, everything. In general the house was disgusting, unlivable, really, just the worst. Well, the scumbags who lived here still try to use our address even after 5 years. About a year and a half ago one of the dudes used our address to renew his driver's license at the BMV. He even had the audacity to leave a note for us to call him when the license came in. Fast forward a few months, around Christmas time. We are all sitting around, watching TV when we get a knock on the door. My husband answers it and it's a SWAT team with guns drawn. They see my husband, who does not look like a methed out crackhead, and inside are our 2 little boys, my parents, and me nursing our baby plus the Christmas tree and all the lovely trappings of our home. They immediately put their guns down and my husband and I had a lovely chat with them. Yeah, they had our house surrounded, guns drawn, the whole shebang, looking for this dude who was wanted on some kind of violent felony. We were pissed at this dude who I refer to as Big Nasty. I live in a small town in rural England, and we used to get some trainees new police officers from the Met there for their training. Me and some of my friends were teenagers. We were walking to the supermarket, because what else is there to do in a small town pre-internet? Suddenly from out of nowhere this police car comes screaming out of nowhere. Sirens going and screeches to a halt in front of us. A young guy, must have only been about 5 years or so older than us, jumps out and starts giving us the whole hairdryer treatment. He lines us up and starts taking our statements of what we had been up to in the last hour, gloating at us. You lads are in trouble now. Criminal damage, trespass, theft. You have really screwed up. With him was the local Bobby and he came up to each of us in turn after the younger guy had grilled us and said very jovially, "Now don't worry lads. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. We've had some reports of a break-in. You don't match the preliminary description. And I'm sure we'll get this cleared up when we get the more detailed description come through." So the more detailed description comes through the radio and the young guy is wearing the biggest eating grin you've ever seen. The description didn't even remotely match. And honestly the young guy looked so disappointed we all ended up feeling sorry for him. So yeah, that was probably quite embarrassing for him. Edit. Typing no good. There had been a string of robberies, 7 in 2 weeks, in my neighborhood. So everyone was on high alert. I was home by myself, and one of my dogs started puking. So I rushed to let him outside, forgetting my dad had set the alarm. We had a silent alarm, so I had no clue it had been tripped. Sending out a dispatch request to the local 5-0. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I'm young, home alone by myself, and had been told to never answer the door if I was alone. So I didn't. They kept knocking. Long story short, they broke the door down. They thought they had caught the burglars. Multiple cars. I vaguely remember there being a K9 unit involved, and the police had their suspect, a 9-year-old girl, crying her eyes out. I was not the group of thieves, who ended up being caught about a week later. Obligatory not a cop, but one day I was on the way home, and I noticed the police helicopter flying overhead. I lived in a big city at the time, so I thought nothing of it until I was blocked in by 2 police officers. Someone in an SUV very similar to mine had been trying to lure children at a school nearby, and was considered a dangerous offender due to previous convictions. They thought they had their guy, but all they had that day was a very pregnant and bewildered white girl in an SUV with her ice cream. The one officer came to my window with his hand on his gun and asked me if I knew anything about someone luring children in my Jeep that day, and I looked at him in bewilderment. I have a panic disorder. Hopefully that explains my reaction, and blurted out, I have 2 under 5 and 1 right here. What the duck do I want someone else's for? Luckily they let me go after telling me what to keep an eye out for. I can laugh about it now. Not a police officer, but I was the wrong guy once. I was dating this girl, and when things didn't work out, she got vindictive. She had a copy of my car insurance and got a guy friend to pose as me to call the police and report my vehicle stolen. I go bebopping out of work one glorious Friday afternoon and get felony stopped by about 10 Dallas TXPD officers. Guns drawn on me and everything. Right outside of the large office complex I worked at. Turns out the people who reported my car stolen used their own phone number when filing the report and eventually got caught and charged. This guy definitely went through some it being the wrong person. Photo of the 2 men. Montana, Missouri man spent nearly 17 years behind bars for robbery until his doppelganger was discovered. Osa and the other guy looked so much like him that authorities decided to toss out his conviction. More than Jones, 41, had been serving a 19-year jail sentence for a 1999 robbery when he heard other inmates buzzing that another prisoner looked just like Tim Osa and even shared his first name. Starr said, more than it's unclear what the other man was locked up for, and Jones never saw his doppelganger, but he told 2 legal interns assigned to his case about the rumors. According to Alice Craig, one of Jones' lawyers, more than the interns brought the message back to their superiors at the Midwest Innocence Project and the Paul E. Wilson Defender Project, who dug further into the case. More than it turned out that not only did the other man bear an uncanny resemblance to Jones, he also lived closer to the site of the crime. More than Jones' doppelganger, Ricky Amos, used to live with his mother in Kansas City, Kansas, near the address of the incident. Craig said, Jones lived across the state line in Kansas City, Mo. More than when I saw that picture, it made sense to me, said Jones, who has denied committing the robbery, to the Star. More than either you're going to think we're the same person, or you're going to be like, oh Simon, these guys, they look so much alike. More than his lawyers showed the 2 men's photos to the victim. 2 witnesses in the prosecutor in Jones' case, Osa and all 4 admitted they could not tell the pair apart, according to the Star. Not a PO but worked in family business. We once brought the wrong corpse to the funeral. The widow was really angry. Well, like many other posts, I'm not a PO but I did get felony stopped while on Las Vegas Boulevard. I left work, pulled out of the parking garage and turned right on Tropicana. I then see lights behind me and start to pull over thinking it was an emergency vehicle. I'm then surrounded by police with guns drawn. This was like midnight on the strip, so it was intense. Police make get out, walk backwards with my hands on my head. They cuff me and tear into my car almost immediately. Long story short, it was another Mustang with out-of-state tags involved in a robbery. That was an intense evening. Once again, not a police officer. I was on the receiving end. I'd been at a small bar listening to some live music with a friend. We leave a couple hours later, and less than a mile from the bar I get pulled over. No big deal. I pull into a circular driveway and then I get scared. No fewer than 4 police cars surrounded us. 2 behind and 2 in front. They come to both sides and leave a number of officers at our windows while they run our licenses. See, earlier, in between sets, a lady got on stage and warned any women there not to walk home or accept rides from strangers. Apparently, there had been a number of abductions and rapes in the area. My friend and I ignored it. We were not alone and we were not women. Finally, the cops give us our identification back and tell us we matched the description of the rapists. Didn't say how they determined it wasn't us, but apologized and sent us on our way. It wasn't until the next day we realized just how bad that could have been.